Welcome back to America's Now. The country of Peru is famous for the ancient Inca city of Machu Picchu, one of the 7 wonders of the world. But it's just as famous for a wondrous crop that is a staple on dinner tables across the globe. 8,000 years ago, the potato originated from Peru. It was the principal food source for the Inca Empire, where it was also used to treat injuries. What you might be surprised to know, though, is that the potato comes in thousands of different varieties, all of which are being studied in the capital city of Lima. America's Now contributing correspondent Hena Cuevas visited the place that is determined to give the starchy spud the dignity it's due.
High above the Andes Mountains of Peru, farmers plant much the same way they did thousands of years ago. Not much grows here, but the harsh conditions at this high altitude have been ideal for one very popular crop. Peru holds the title as the birthplace of the potato, claiming more than 4,000 species. And here at the International Potato Center in Lima is where they're studied, prodded, and stored.
We call it the humble crop. It doesn't look too pretty and it's under the ground. It's not like the other flashy crops, but it contains almost everything that you would need to survive.
Janny Van Beem is responsible for the thousands of samples kept at their gene bank.
People are amazed when I say, well, we conserve about 23,000 accessions within the bank. You know, they're surprised. 23,000 different kinds. I said, yes, that includes native potatoes, that includes sweet potato, that includes Andean roots and tubers, and of course it includes improved materials.
King among them are the native potatoes, which evolved over thousands of years.
Yanni, we're at the native potato display, and there's some very interesting potatoes here, like this one that looks like a paw.
This one actually is called the Jana Pumamaki, which means the paw of a black panther. And it's a very special type of native potato, as are all of them that you see here.
And just as unusual as their appearance are the stories that follow them. Here is the mother-in-law potato. Legend has it a woman must remove the skin of this grenade-looking potato in one piece in order to prove her love.
It's actually a challenge for the daughter-in-law to be able to peel that potato and end up with something, and that would tell the mother-in-law how good a wife she would be for her son.
The International Potato Center, or CIP as it's called by its Spanish language acronym, was established in 1971 as a research facility. Its purpose is to study roots and tubers, their viability as a world food source, and to make sure they're all preserved.
So it's very important to us to conserve it because they represent some species that may have been lost already to climate change or urbanization.
Potatoes were also a victim of the violence that affected Peru in the 1980s. The terrorist group Shining Path wanted to establish a communist state, so it staged a war against the government. The armed conflict left tens of thousands of people dead, and it also forced a lot of farmers to abandon their fields, losing many of the crops along the way. Today, the farmers are slowly returning, but they've lost many of the seeds they used to sow. This is where CIP comes in. 10 years ago, as part of a pilot program, the center began returning their preserved samples to about 1,200 families in the Andes.
They're receiving basically the same accessions that they had before, except that they're completely clean of all the viruses that they used to have, which decrease yield greatly. And so now they had basically what they had in the 70s and 80s, but with clean germplasm.
CIP contains the largest collection of germplasm, or seed samples, in the world. In the gene bank, each species is kept free of disease and constantly separated and multiplied.
But it's more than just preserving the native potatoes of Peru. It's also about sharing all of that knowledge and information with the rest of the world. These in vitro plantlets, for example, are on their way to far-off countries such as Nepal, Bhutan, and Ecuador so that they can be introduced into their food system.
Each test tube contains information on the best growing conditions for each, as well as how resistant they are to certain diseases. Agronomist Oscar Ortiz helps determine what to send based on the needs of the country making the request.
We have a database of our best materials and how these materials perform under different conditions, highlands, drylands, lowlands, etc. So we match the requests with our database and we identify the best possible candidates to be sent.
He says many countries are experiencing slight changes in temperature, which are affecting the way certain areas used to farm.
The problem is that with climate change, those areas are becoming warmer and new diseases or insects are going there. So that's putting pressure and threatening the conservation of those varieties in the natural habitat.
According to Ortiz, potatoes can serve as an alternative for countries looking for crops that can be grown in less time.
Potato produces much more food per area than any other crop and in shorter period. Just to give an example, for producing bananas, you may need 9 months. For producing potatoes in Africa, you need 3 to 4 months only in the same area.
The center in Lima does not perform any genetic engineering as it is prohibited by law in Peru.
Are there any dangers with introducing a non-native species?
No, because both crops, potato and sweet potato, are common crops, usually are existing in the countries. What we are taking care in our program is to make sure that the potatoes and the sweet potatoes that we send are free of any possible disease that could be introduced to a country.
And the testing is continuous, subjecting the potatoes to pressures such as insects, as well as various growing conditions. These fields, for example, are used to grow low-altitude varieties and to test the rotation cycles. But despite being the home of the potato, only about a dozen of the native ones are available in the market. According to agricultural economist Miguel Ordinola, a few years ago, SIP wanted to change that. So it helped develop a line of native potato chips using those with the most colorful insides of red, purple, and orange.
The colored potatoes have a higher presence of antioxidants, which are linked to good health. We want to present strong scientific information about this, so we can give these products made from the native potatoes a bigger commercial push.
And it's not just chips. There are also mashed potatoes and even anti-wrinkle cream available only in Asia. But it's the native chips that have proven to be the biggest success, selling for almost twice as much as the regular ones.
What's interesting about this whole thing is the product has positioned itself with a willing public that recognizes or pays for a different quality concept.
Ordinola says it's all about making the production of these potatoes a cost-effective venture to encourage small producers to grow them. SIP is also promoting the nutritional value of these roots and tubers overseas. In Africa, white-fleshed sweet potatoes are preferred. However, the orange-fleshed ones, which are high in vitamin A, are key to preventing blindness in children.
If they were to eat sweet potato maybe 2 or 3 times per week, it would be a wonderful option to do away with that type of deficiency.
It's also a way to reduce the dependency of imports of vitamin supplements. SIP currently operates in over 30 countries. The most recent office is opening in China to cover the needs of Southeast Asia. But as demand increases for food, SIP is hoping roots and tubers can help, just the way they did the ancient tribes of Peru thousands of years ago, not only flourishing despite the harsh growing conditions, but even surviving terrorism along the way.
Researchers say that most species of the potato originate from the plateaus of Peru. However, the potato has been a top crop in other parts of the world for centuries as well. Take Europe, for example, where the popular plant was both reviled and revered. Spain first brought the potato back to Europe with them after their invasion of South America and used them to feed their livestock and as a supply item on ships. Germany used them to feed prisoners. In meat-loving England, potatoes were first recognized by the upper class. Ireland became so dependent on them for their nutritional value that during the potato famine of the 1800s, over 1 million people died of starvation and millions more made their exodus to America. But it was in France, where Marie Antoinette liked potato blossoms so much, she wore them in her hair, that the destiny of the potato was changed forever. It is France that is credited with dropping potatoes in oil and creating the taste sensation resulting in what we now know today as French fries. In recent decades, the potato has seen its greatest increase in consumption take place in Asia. In fact, China is now the country that produces more potatoes than anywhere else in the world.